when a car manufacturer creates a car, one of the things they do before they release the car to the market is they do what's called a high impact car crash test. They basically take a car really fast and smash it into a wall. It looks really cool, but there's a big purpose behind it. And the purpose is for them to analyze the crash so that they can make the car as best as possible so that if there is a real life crash, the people in the car are protected. The standard way of doing this is they use cameras which just point at the car in a number of different directions, and then they analyze a standard video frame. With virtual reality, you have what's called a 360 or 180 degree camera frame, or cameras. And so with high-speed video, you're able to capture something in high speed. You're able to go slow frame by frame. So in a 360 environment, if you put a 360-degree camera rig inside of a car at a crash test, you're then able to analyze frame by frame the entire crash from the inside of the car versus just from the outside.
Hey everyone, welcome to AI Trance with Ash. This is Ash Bala, your host. Join me in this series as I chat with industry experts, thought leaders, and professionals to gain insights into how AI is shaping the future of work. Whether you're a high schooler curious about AI in any industry, or a working professional looking to gain more knowledge, this series has something for you. In today's episode, I'm thrilled to welcome David Borish, a seasoned entrepreneur and AI expert with over 2 decades of experience in driving innovation and business growth. As a serial founder, he has consistently demonstrated a commitment to excellence in AI strategy and innovation. At Pulsar Inc., Mr. Borish led the AI strategy, creating a groundbreaking machine learning model to transform the decarbonization platform. In the past decade, Mr. Borish has made significant contributions integrating AI in various industries. Notably, he conceptualized and led the development of the industry's first high-speed 360 camera rig, capable of capturing an impressive 12,000 frames per second. He also developed a machine learning algorithm to effectively manage and process the vast amounts of data generated by the camera rig. Mr. Borish has also made unique contributions in voice search technology. He conceptualized, patented, and prototyped the first voice search assistant. Additionally, he specializes in recommending top-performing speech-to-text, which is STT, and natural language understanding, which can be NLU, services tailored to specific data sets and geographical regions. Mr. Borish also shares his knowledge as a mentor in the NYU Stern School of Business. He is also a guest lecturer on AI at the NYU Professional Program. Mr. Borish serves as a global AI strategist, advising companies on effectively integrating the latest AI advancements. Drawing from extensive experience in founding startups, he brings a unique combination of strategic foresight, technical expertise, and entrepreneurial spirit to the table. Join us today as we explore Mr. Borish's journey at the intersection of AI, innovation, and transformative change. Without further ado, David Borish, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Aish. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So my first few questions will be about your background and how you basically pursued your career. So my first question, could you tell us a bit about your career path and what took you from your beginnings in founding companies like Midtown Capital Group and CrowdHut to the intersection of AI and decarbonization at Pulsar Inc.?
Yeah, so I would say my first venture into technology was about 25 years ago, and I started with an idea to create a software which, at the time, blogs were just starting, and newspapers didn't have websites. So there was a lot of newspapers that just had like physical newspapers but no websites, and so we realized that people were going to need websites, and so we created a platform to try to help them. And in that platform, it allowed them to take their news articles and easily post them as articles online. We were early competitors with a company called Blogger, which was eventually acquired by Google. So, we had to compete against Google, which wasn't too easy, even in the early days,
Right.
which they had been raising a lot of capital even back then, and we're talking
Yeah.
early 2000s. So so that was kind of the entry into the market, and then throughout the years, a bunch of other different ventures in technology, whether it was investing or being part of, including CrowdHut, which was in the where we what we did was we aggregated products which were successfully crowdfunded. So if you go to any crowdfunding site where they look for audiences to kind of help them raise capital, we created the first platform where they can actually sell the product on, and eventually, Amazon kind of took that role and became the platform which a lot of people used for that purpose. But we were really early on a lot of things, so it's usually the thing in tech. It's like you have a great idea, you're either too early or hopefully right on time, and then to kind of bring it forward as far as tie it in with AI. In 2017, you mentioned on the intro where you mentioned 360-degree cameras. So I had created the first camera which had 1,000 frames per second each camera, and then we had a camera array of 8 cameras, and one of them even 12 cameras. So you can imagine about 8,000 frames per second, and then the other one was 12,000 frames per second. And the purpose of it was to capture high-speed video in a 360-degree way so that eventually someone could analyze that video from an industrial purpose in a virtual reality environment or VR headset. So that was kind of the purpose, but we ran into a big challenge, and the challenge was, how do you manage all of that data? And we didn't have an answer. And the interesting thing was that right when we didn't have an answer, Google announced the breakthrough paper in transformer models. So we were one of the first companies to actually utilize transformer models in working with this amount of data. And now transformer models is really what brought us to this AI, time in history where, we're able to get products like ChatGPT and a number of these generative AI products. So, and in between, there were a few other things you had mentioned, my patents in AI voice. And it was really just being an entrepreneur and trying to seek opportunities or realize opportunities. And in that case, it was around 2018, 2019, when Google Voice and Alexa started becoming popular. One of the things that I realized was that if you ask a question on Google, and if you ask a question on Alexa, it depends on your accent, but you may get a different answer. And the reason is those speech to text models or NLP models, they were both trained on specific data sets. So the invention or the patent that we were granted was to create basically a router which then realizes the person asking the question, what their location is, what their zip code is, dialect, similar dialect, and so it will then route to the voice system, which will give them the best response. So it was again just kind of looking at opportunity and seeing where ideas could generate maybe a product or eventually a business, and that's kind of been the trajectory.
Awesome. I think it's really cool that you've been doing this since like very early stages and even like competing with later acclaimed Google companies or company. And it's very inspiring that you kept doing it and pursuing it until you found something or you got what result you wanted. So that's really cool. Awesome.
Thank
So
you.
my second question is, Mr. Borish, as a serial tech entrepreneur, what advice would you give to high school students interested in starting their own tech companies?
Yeah, so you guys have it lucky. You're in a time in history where it's never been easier to start a company, right? It's like you have all the tools, most of them free, or at least to get started free, where you can come up with an idea, create a website, get it designed nicely. And, all of these things were so challenging. I mean, even thinking, in the early 2000s, I mean, you had to actually invest into servers, which were in your office or in your house, and there was no such thing as a cloud server, and so advice I would say is, if you feel you have a good idea, the first thing to do is to validate that idea. And again, this is another thing that has never been easier. And the validation process is basically seeing what other ideas similar to that are on the market, or who has discussed or talked about. So that could be everything from like a Reddit, or just basically a website where people may have mentioned or article. And so once you kind of feel like it hasn't been done, and not saying that you can't start something that has been done, because maybe you could do it better, faster, and
Yeah.
cheaper. But in this world, it's easier to have a unique idea and validate it. So you might as well start with something, unique. You probably have a better chance, especially if you're competing against larger companies like I did by accident in my early career.
Yeah.
Um, so that's the thing. And then also try a lot of things, and people always say do stuff you're passionate about. That's true. But people also have different aspirations. So if your aspiration is to make money, it's great if you're passionate about it. But if you have a good idea that could make a lot of money and your aspiration is to make money, then it's okay. You don't necessarily have to be passionate about it, because when you start making money, it could drive the passion, right? So you kind of, I don't want to give, the advice to say like it's not necessary, to be passionate, but it's also, it's easier not to have to just love it if you love parts of it.
Yeah.
But validation is the best example. And then, try something a bunch of different ways. Don't be scared to fail. There's no such thing as failure. It's really just pivoting in tech. Technology is such a moving industry that pivoting just means that you're making sure your idea can work in an actual commercial environment. And just the initial idea doesn't get you there. There's a lot of work that goes into it to go from idea to actually making money from it.
Right. Awesome. So now I'll go more into what you do and your company. So as
Mhm.
co-founder and head of AI strategy, how do you envision AI transforming, reducing CO2 emissions?
So we have a very unique company and technology. So Pulsar is the creator of a new version of hydrogen gas. It's a hydrogen bonded gas, so it's bonded with hydrogen and oxygen. And instead of using the gas as a pure energy source, what we decided to do was to use it to clean up heavy waste oil in the oil and gas industry. So one of the biggest problems we have facing our environment today is that we're stuck with oil and gas. Unfortunately, as much as we want to be clean, there's still, too many cars that are not electrical powered, or, that need oil and gas. And just our entire infrastructure is around the world is based on oil and gas. So we decided the best use of this new technology was to inject it and create a system around cleaning heavy fuel oil. So we take what's left over after the refining process, and instead of that being burned, which is really bad for the environment, high sulfur, high metal, we clean it up, and we clean it up without creating any additional CO2. So essentially, we coming to market have the largest carbon capture technology. Although in the world of carbon capture, it's not recognized that way, but the amount of carbon that we'll be saving in the oil that's burned is significant. So AI itself, what we have done is we created a strategy where we're tying in the CO2 to the market and being able to use AI to then make sure we're ultimately refining at the lowest capacity or not refining, but cleaning at the lowest capacity and making sure that, we're utilizing AI to be as efficient as possible.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So my fourth question for you is for the benefit of our high school listeners, could you define text-to-speech or STT and natural language understanding, NLU services?
Mm-hmm. So speech to text is based on an AI system that learns how to take actual human speech and then understand what it says and then write it out. So these systems used to be really bad. Everybody knows this from using Siri or any of the phones on their apps on their phone. And so these models are only as good as they're trained. So they've gotten really good. It's not necessarily a problem as much as it was, 7, 8 years ago,
Right.
when we had gotten into NLP
Yeah.
or STT, and then natural language processing NLP is also kind of the same idea. It's like it will take what you've said and then understand it so that it can give you a result, either from searching or from just as we do with generative AI now, taking that phrase or that prompt and understanding what it means in order to give you the correct response.
Okay, cool. So just as a follow-up question, could you give us some real world or real life examples of this?
Yeah, so that's like I just said. Anytime you use Siri or any type of Google Voice or anything where you're speaking to the AI or speaking to the system and you're asking a question, both of those AI, data sets or training models will be used in the process. So just know, like when you say, "Hey Siri," or whatever your speech system is, it will be using those two technologies in getting you the response.
Okay, cool. So my next question is related to VR. So how does high-speed 360-degree camera rigs work, and what makes it special compared to regular cameras?
So what we did, and this was an early idea as well, this was for us to be able to use VR in an industrial setting. So when a car manufacturer creates a car, one of the things they do before they release the car to the market is they do what's called a high impact car crash test. And so if anyone's ever looked on YouTube and seen what a car crash test looks like, they basically take a car really fast and smash it into a wall. It looks really cool, but there's a big purpose behind it. And the purpose is for them to analyze the crash so that they can make the car as best as possible so that if there is a real life crash, the people in the car are protected. So, the standard way of doing this is they use cameras which just point at the car in a number of different directions, and then they analyze a standard video frame. So what my idea was that with virtual reality, you have what's called a 360 or 180 degree camera frame,
Yeah.
or cameras. And so with high speed video, you're able to capture something in high speed. You're able to go slow frame by frame. So in a 360 environment, if you put a 360 degree camera rig inside of a car at a crash test, you're then able to analyze frame by frame the entire crash from the inside of the car versus just from the outside. So so the idea was to, give car manufacturers more, or a better tool in their, in analyzing.
Very cool. Okay. Okay, so my next question is shifting to writing books. You recently published your book titled AI 2024 Trends, Technologies, and Transformations. So I really enjoyed the book. I just glanced over some of the chapters, and I actually very much recommend it to any high school audience listeners. Chapter one conveys AI's influence spreading through various industries. So could you give us a sneak peek into your favorite trend in 2024 or past ones too, and why it is your top on your list?
Yeah, I mean, generative AI has to be it. It's complete. The last 2 years have been a whirlwind in terms of AI in general, but especially with generative AI. And generative AI is everything from ChatGPT or just the language model of text, all the way through to video and images in between. And so it has completely transformed, the way people work between school and between jobs, as far as research goes, as far as writing goes. And so I would say, generative is definitely up there on the list. The book started because I started writing a newsletter on LinkedIn, which I think, that's initially how you found me on there. And so I began writing, and in just a short amount of time, I had over 150 or 40 articles at the time when I wrote the book. And I said, this is moving so fast and there's so much content here. I would love to just put this into something so that we could document, all that's happening in one location. So that was the initial idea. And then, I'm almost ready for part two already, because that's how many more articles I have since the writing of it. But one of the things that I try to do with my writing is I try to take complex topics and boil them down so that they're easy to understand, right? So like anybody from high school all the way through who's not technical could kind of look at something, because a lot of papers that come out, they're very technical and they kind of get complicated to read, even for someone that understands, some of the language.
Yeah.
So in this book, what I did was I kept everything very simple, and I mentioned complex topics, but I always try to describe it in easy to read terms.
Yeah, awesome. And I definitely saw that in the book, which means that you accomplished that. So awesome.
Thank you.
So my next question is, how do you stay current with the rapid changing field of AI and technology? And what resources or strategies do you recommend for students?
So it's not easy, I'm going to tell you, and the reason is, so much money is being poured into AI, which means from the university level all the way through, corporate, and more papers are being written than ever before. And usually what happens is an academic paper then becomes, someone takes that idea and then tries to turn it into a product. And I'll give you an example. It used to be every 6 months, every 8 months, a breakthrough would happen. And, I'd be surprised. Each week I read, 2 to 3 hours, I would say a day on average, at least 2 hours between reading and listening to podcasts and books on AI. And I'm probably blown away more than once a week, on advancements. So what I advise is, research. If you're on Twitter, go to Twitter, where people recommend people that talk about AI. Subscribe to newsletters. There's a lot of popular newsletters out there, depending on what your kind of category is. If it's generative AI, if it's creative, meaning like for the creative fields, or if it's more technical, you can always find newsletters to help you. If not, you can always subscribe to AI Chronicle. That's my newsletter. It's on LinkedIn, but also on my website, davidborish.com. And I put out one article a day. I don't necessarily take the headlines. My goal is to kind of look at what's most interesting to me, that I think people would get the most out of. And so that's kind of how I write. But again, there's other ones who just post links to articles to kind of keep you up to date. So definitely the idea would be, subscribe to newsletters and things that are in your interest, and just spend the time, because it's, even if you don't have the time daily, but you do it at least once a week, it'll keep you kind of up to date with everything happening. But it is difficult. I'm not going to. You
Or
do have to put the work in and the time in, as you probably know yourself.
great. So next, I'm going to share 5 skills identified as essentials, regardless of whatever the future brings. Sorry. According to the Leadership Skills Foundation, what are your top 2 picks? So 1, teamwork; 2, communication; 3, self-belief; 4, problem solving; or 5, self-management.
So self belief, because when you're an entrepreneur, you're going to find that family members, friends, they, if someone, no matter how close they are to you, doesn't have the same aspiration or goals as you, they may not give you the reaction that you anticipate, and it could kind of not give you the drive to move forward. So if you believe in yourself, that doesn't matter, because then you either way you'll have that belief, and you'll just move forward no matter what
Yeah.
the surrounding people around you think or say or do. And it won't kind of dim your light and your spirit. So I think that one, and then self-management. It is so easy to get distracted, especially with social media, especially with, when I say I spend 2 to 3 hours a day listening to podcasts and reading and testing new software, I'm not kidding, and I have to. And then if I look at a week where I haven't, and I try to check my social media, it better not have 2 or 3 hours on social media. And sometimes it does. Everybody, you kind of have that where you waste time. So time management and self management is very important.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. I think I would choose those 2 as well.
That's
Awesome.
great.
So, my next and last question is, finally, there's often talk about the potential risks of AI, including concerns of an AI apocalypse. What is your definition of an AI apocalypse first?
So this is an interesting question, because some of the biggest scientists and minds in the world don't agree on this, right? So, like, say,
Every single person I've interviewed, I was going to say, has had different versions or things that they have to say about this. So it's always interesting to ask this question. But yes, go ahead. Sorry.
yeah, no, that's great. It's great to hear from you, because I've been in rooms with some of the smartest people in AI in the world. I'm part of the AI fund and a private group of, like, the biggest AI minds in the field. And if you ask the questions to them, you probably would get the same response
Yeah.
all over the place. My personal opinion is, we don't know what we don't know, right? So the risk that we have right now is that when AGI, artificial general intelligence, becomes smarter than the smartest human that ever existed, which means your ChatGPT could then do the same as, a Nobel Prize winner in terms of anything that they've ever done, right?
Right.
We don't know what it might think next. And what I mean by that is, the risk is, it says, well, these humans, we want to preserve humanity. We got to get rid of them because they have wars, and they're on Twitter saying crazy stuff, and things like that. And so there's a risk there. We don't know what we don't know. If something is smarter than us, and this is a kind of a bad example, but it's the best example I can think of, is we're super intelligent compared to ants, right? So we walk out of our house, and I don't say bugs, but ants are the easiest to explain. You may step on some ants. Unfortunately, it's just they're a casualty of our existence. And the question is that because we are super intelligent compared to them? And if that's the reason, what happens when a super intelligent becomes that more super intelligent to us? do we just become a casualty of their existence? So to me, that's the kind of fear part of it, or that's the part of it that's, the unknown. I'm a techno optimist, so I have to think that it's just going to make society better, and we're not going to have to experience that, because we're already with wars and things that happen, we're already, in the middle of an, existential risk that's happening. So I'm hoping that it's the opposite, and it actually makes society and humanity, much better.
Yeah, I agree. And as a follow-up question to that, what keeps you up at night, or what are you most optimistic about in terms of that? I know you already focused about your optimistic part, but yeah.
What am I excited about with AI?
Yeah,
Meaning,
basically.
okay. So on the creative side, I'm very excited. I feel like there's an opportunity right now, and upcoming for creatives. They're basically going to be, creatives are going to be looked at as more important than pretty much every field. And you're like, well, what do you mean? AI could write and create stuff. But in order to create something interesting, you have to have a story and a mind that does it behind it. Because you could tell it what to do, but it doesn't come up with that idea without you telling it, right? So if you have all the tools, and I'll give you an example. When Steve Jobs started Pixar, he had the best technology with the most money and the best developers. But that's why Pixar became Pixar, and they did some amazing movies even to this day. They also had a team of tech people and a team of animators. So the animators and the animators and the creative people in that equation are all that's needed, because you don't no longer need a Steve Jobs, and you no longer need a lot of money in the tech, because everybody's going to have it in their house. So what I'm looking forward to is the next Steven Spielberg being, found in India, Kenya, somewhere nobody's thinking of, in their bedroom. And it's already happened. We've already seen this with other parts of tech, but where, it democratizes creativity to a point where we're going to have this amazing amount of creative work being created by people who would never have access to that level of technology before. So I'm just really excited about what's to come in terms of, AI video and audio and creative side of things.
Definitely. Okay, perfect. That brings us to the conclusion of today's conversation with our esteemed guest, David Borish. We covered a lot of ground, from entrepreneurship to AI technology to VR. We explored David Borish's journey from founding companies like Midtown Capital Group and CrowdHut to his innovative roles at Pulsar and Neo 360. His advice from aspiring entrepreneurs, insights on AI roles in reducing CO2 emissions, and explanations from speech to text and natural language understanding services were very valuable. Mr. Borish's newly published book, AI 2024, Trends, Technologies, and Transformation, is a must-read. His tips for staying current in AI are practical for students, especially high school students. His balanced take on AI's risk and rewards gave us plenty of food for thought. So thank you so much, Mr. Borish, for taking the time to share your experiences and expertise. Before we sign off, do you have any final thoughts for our audience or extra advice for our high school community?
Yeah, listen, you guys have it, like I said, you're living in the best time in history as far as technology goes. And, you have everything available at your fingertips. Most people have a phone in their pocket, and they're able to ask any question. Be curious, utilize the free tools that are available. ChatGPT 3.5 is a free download available. If you have a mobile phone or access to a laptop, you're able to use it. Use the voice feature, which is conversational, both everything from just being curious and asking questions. I mean, I'll be talking to AI just as my mind is going. I think that's a super useful tool. And also for kind kind of having a soundboard, personally. I just did a keynote recently in the university about, for the first time ever, people are going to have a therapist or somewhat of a therapist to talk to in terms of an AI, and you can do that now. You're having some personal issues, you don't have anyone outlet to speak to. AI is a great avenue for that. So, just take advantage of the tools and be curious, and I think you guys will be okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mr. Borish, for joining me today. It's been an absolute honor having you on the show. So with that, we wrap up this episode with David Borish, a trailblazer at the intersection of AI, technological innovation, and entrepreneurship. I will see you all in my next episode. Until then, stay curious. Bye.